Have you been following signs, chasing synchronicities, and using symbolism as your spiritual roadmap? Most people believe synchronicities are the universe's way of sending messages, or that they are receiving divine guidance. But what if the signs aren't coming from the divine at all? What if they're coming from interference? I'm Tracey Gillies, and I've spent the last decade commanding and releasing demonic and multidimensional entity interference at the highest levels. And I literally wrote the book on it. And in this episode, I'm walking you through exactly how interference uses symbolism, synchronicities, and superstition to keep you locked outside of yourself and what you can do about it. So confirmations are known to be part of spiritual development and spiritual re-regulation. And we create from this internal connection point, we manifest, and then we start to have things show up in our reality to confirm that we're on that right path progression. But I see endlessly people taking it too far, living their life based on these synchronicities, based on these symbolisms, and continually asking for more and more and more reference points to it. Do you know, if you are living your life based on this, you are living your life based on the paradigm of superstition? What is the paradigm of superstition, you might say? Superstition is when somebody sees a black cat and they go, oh wow, there's a black cat, it means bad luck. And then they kind of create this reality because they've seen this external connection point. A black cat doesn't necessarily mean bad luck. I have a black cat. And so when people live like this, it is actually the power is outside of them. And again, all power needs to be that internal connection point. We create our reality. So this is where it gets really kind of dangerous for people. Don't get me wrong, I know people will look for numbers like angel numbers, and they see a clock and they're like, wow, that's amazing, it was perfect timing, right? Or maybe they see a feather and it is angelic realms, kind of, a sign, and it's a beautiful confirmation. But when they are constantly searching external reference points to create their life from, there is so much room for error and manipulation to occur. And entities love this. They love it. And they feed off it. And I have said this many times before. Unfortunately, a lot of people that live their life and run their life by this also hold the viewpoints that the spiritual is this beautiful place. It's all love and light. Or potentially they don't think it's all love and light, but they need to protect themselves. Protection is also another thing that runs under that paradigm of superstition, that the power's outside of me and I have to protect myself. Entity interference does not work in that way. It manipulates energetics in so many ways. And often the biggest manipulations actually come through the smallest misalignments. I'll say that again. The biggest manipulations often come through the smallest of misalignments. When somebody's looking for that path and that synchronicity and those things to show up, it's a confirmation they're on the right path. But often the highest entity interference will create a deregulation at somebody's highest connection points. So multidimensional entity interference cuts into a person's 10th dimensional aspect. And even though multidimensional is the worst and creates the biggest, deregulations right through, mind, body, soul, nervous system deregulation, but it creates the separation to a person's highest divinity modeling or templates. And so if there's these misalignments, you can't even trust that what you're receiving back and feedback is actually universal information. And I have been a culprit. I will admit I have been a major culprit because, when I first started to engage with spiritual information and re-regulation and the worlds of energy, oh my God, it was so exciting, and I lost myself in it. So I have to say the biggest thing I see, one is something called spiritual fraud. I will talk about that more in a minute. But I see people becoming more and more deregulated by chasing spiritual attainment, by chasing the next alignment, because there are so many misalignments in spiritual information. How I just talked about spiritual fraud, unfortunately, one of the biggest areas of entity interference is people thinking they're engaging with light force energetics or information, and it's not. If you want to know more about anything that I'm talking about, and if anything resonates and you think that you might have some type of entity interference that needs to be cleared, or you're looking to up-level your services by getting fully certified in entity healing, my book, The Truth Behind Entity Interference, is the best place to start. There is a link down below in the showcase notes for you to get your copy. But I talk about spiritual fraud. The spiritual or the physical mirrors the spiritual. And I don't know if you've realized or seen how much fraud there is on earth these days, and it's because there is this high level of interference, spiritual fraud. So people are endlessly going into more and more healing circles, more and more spiritual information, thinking that they're getting alignments, and realistically there is nothing but interference, transference, and more deregulation. This is probably one of the biggest things I see. And people that are spiritual seekers are actually making a bigger mess for themselves. And so then you have that paradigm of superstition, looking at all of these signposts and thinking that they're being led. They're not. They're misrepresentations. I've seen ceremonies where people have gone and sat in ayahuasca, and it has created a huge deregulation. There is a payment for traveling to those realms. And the payment you're paying with your connection. And I've seen people lose their highest connection point, as in what's their highest manifestation, or what their soul progression path, their soul's purpose. And when they don't have that in their templates, they will never be aligned properly, and they will see all of this misinformation almost mirrored back to them from the world, because everything is is this kind of representation of our internal sensory systems, of our templates, of our spiritual alignments. And then they will say, oh, I'm on the right path. You know, I've seen people go and do ceremony and then come back and say they were a coach and a healer. And they said they had this big realization that they don't even want to do that path and be of service anymore. Completely stepped away from, they were good at it too. It was a misrepresentation. People often see spiritual information, they say yes to it, they say yes to it, they say yes to it, they say yes to it. By the time they've said so many yeses, they are so far off their path. You can have entity interference that will sit on an etheric body layer. I call it black lights. And it's black manifestation, and it will pull in more and more deregulation. If you are also a person that hears spiritual information for everybody else, they over-engage, they tune in and they can hear all this information. Or maybe a healer that works with people. And when you're working with your clients, you have this amazing intuition ability because you're tuning into somebody else's field. But when it comes to replaying those same energetics for yourself, your connection is blocked, or your intuition is not as great as it is out with other people's connections. That is a sign of entity interference. That is a sign of over-engaging with spiritual realms and not having this solid connection. Everybody's spiritual templates is really unique and different. And again, we need to be aligned. But as I said, I've made the mistake. I've over-engaged many a times. And as I was going on my journey, I started to, I don't know, you name it, I would do it. I was just searching endlessly. I remember at certain points I was looking at, tarot cards. Great, some of them are beautiful and hold really beautiful messages, don't get me wrong. But I was working with these tarot cards and there was a process in it. And it was talking about getting a bucket of water and throwing it on your shadow in order to wash away, I don't know, it was like your dark, your shadow side, your dark interference, or, these places that we want to heal. Oh my goodness, that will not heal. That will not release entity interference. We have to have this conscious engagement with reality, with creation. We have to understand these patterns, these programs. Like if you were even, constantly seeking this external connection and a showcase of symbolism to show you on the right path, I guarantee you've got programs running around needing another person or another energy to validate. And again, that's a dangerous program to be running, because entities need attachment mechanisms and they need these programs to attach to. And if we're tuning into all of this information and thinking how fabulous this is, everything is light, everything is this higher connection, it is not. The spiritual realms are actually really dangerous when people do not understand what they are engaging with. So let's say you were running your life by confirmations, right? And these spiritual synchronicities. Maybe if you were in a clear space, it would be okay. But let's say you turn up somewhere where the land maybe potentially is dense with very, very destructive energetics. Maybe there's a lot of trauma in the land. Maybe it's somebody's house. Maybe it's an environment somewhere. You can have a lot of external energies. And what I always like to talk about is entity interference can see all our spiritual matrices. So they could manipulate external environments to showcase something to you. A confirmation, a pattern that you've kind of been mirroring and saying, wow, this is divine guidance. And they could manipulate that sign or that symbolism. And by you saying yes to it, you've just allowed an entity interference to attach. The safest connection is the one that you have within yourself. I've been working with people for the last to help them heal and release entity interference. Entity interference is always there for a reason. So many people just think that there is this world that, they've got no control over, and that attachments can occur, but they don't take any ownership or responsibility for it because they don't understand how, why, where it can start to attach. And when you start to over-engage with spiritual realms, when you start to over-engage with all of this information and think that it's all just an up-leveling, holds the potential to create the biggest deregulations, and the ones that you can't see, the ones that are kind of a minor deregulation. A lot of people think entity interference is kind of so vast and so obvious, and they would know if they have entity interference. Believe me, people can have so many layers and levels and vast, vast amounts. But in order to create change, in order to re-regulate, in order to release interference, you have to understand what the attachment mechanism was and why it was there in the first place. Please stop basing your identity, your spiritual development, on all of these external variations, even trinkets, even like people will kind of endlessly, understanding entity interference is one of the starting places to really reclaiming that power of what you're creating for yourself. I see people endlessly searching outside of themselves, like mind, body, spirit festivals. Wow, places like that have all of this spiritual knowledge, and people swarm. Oh my God, they do. Have you ever been to one of those places? It's almost like this frenzy of everybody going in and thinking they're going to find this next thing or this next thing to create change, to create spiritual elevation. And believe me, places like that, wow, some of the densest places for energy, for entity interference, because they know people are searching outside of themselves for information, for the next confirmation, for, oh my goodness, this is a sign and I'm going to go and do this. Please, you need to start looking at your own energetic connection, not over and engaging with these worlds of energy, thinking that is engagement with the spiritual. There is a way, there is a safe way to engage with your own connection, and then understanding all of these areas, understanding entity interference, because understanding that light and dark go together. It's the balance of everything. And so if you do not understand entity interference and you have been spiritually seeking for a very, very long time, you need to understand the other half of the equation, because knowledge is powerful. and we up level and we create change and transformation based on conscious awareness is key, so that we can direct our consciousness favorably about what we want to create. But we need to come back to this internalized connection. A lot of these details, again, I have written a lot about my journey, my story, how I've kind of come to know and understand these things. Believe me, I made all the mistakes that there are possible. And through that journey of the last 10 years of my life, to step out of enslavement, to step into sovereignty, to recreate myself over and over, and that up-leveling that everybody is searching for, but not externally, then I've created like a roadmap of information around all of these areas of the spiritual, and the darkness is just intertwined with all of it. So if you've liked this episode, please subscribe or follow. If you've got any questions, drop them in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next episode.